Hey everyone, welcome to the Sonically podcast where music creators educate music creators. I'm Elmo. Today we're joined by a true pioneer in game and film audio, Tim Larkin. From scoring iconic titles from Riven, Myst V, Portal, and Dota 2 to crafting immersive sound for The Incredibles and the Lord of the Rings games, Tim's sonic fingerprints are all over the industry. He's an award-winning composer, a longtime audio lead at Valve, and a world-class trumpet player who's performed with legends like Sheila E., James Brown, and Natalie Cole. Now he's entering a new chapter, releasing a brand new jazz album featuring members of Earth, Wind, and Fire themselves. Whether he's weaving Maasai chants into game scores or reimagining jazz with a cinematic twist, Tim Larkin pushes the boundaries of what music can do. So without further ado, please welcome to the show, Tim Larkin. Hey Tim, how you doing?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thanks for doing this. And we really love the journey that you've been on with creating music, and I feel like in terms of composition, your career is very unique, and I think a lot of our listeners will get a lot out of it. But if we could we start from the beginning?
Sure.
Did you grow up with music in your life?
Yeah, I did. I didn't have a musical family, but they were into music. My dad played Miles all the time and jazz and classical music. He was into music a lot. I remember one of my earliest memories is he played a classical piece, and I think it was Bolero. Actually, it was Bolero, and he played it, and he turned off the lights. He said, "Now just sit here with your eyes closed and imagine, what you see when you hear this music." And that kind of inspiration I got a lot from my parents, and they really pushed me into. I wouldn't say pushed me into, but supported my musical career from very young. But I started piano lessons at the age of 4 and started playing trumpet in fourth grade. So, I was always playing in community bands or the school bands or outside organizations. So I was exposed to music constantly from a very early age. Yeah, it was on the plate constantly.
So fast forward to present day and you hear the name Tim Larkin, you associate your name with a lot of amazing works, especially attached to the gaming industry. And it's been such a long journey where you can kind of reflect back on a lot of different pivotal moments in your life and in your career. What have been some of the biggest challenges you've faced in your career, and how have you overcome them?
I mean, it started out. The biggest challenge was trying to be a trumpet player. I mean, getting the contractors in the area to trust you, going on a gig and being on time and making sure that everything that you're playing your best so that you get called back. And the biggest challenge in the beginning is not necessarily your skills. I mean, you can have a great player that can go and read anything down, but it's like the hard part is getting people to trust that. So the challenge is getting over the hump of having people call you in the beginning. That's really tough. Then once you get that going, it's much easier because then you have the confidence, and you're not constantly doing the marketing side, which is really the challenge. Then the challenges come, like within writing and composing. I mean, the challenges come, on a regular basis. Every time you get the blank page, right? It's a challenge. And some, again, like I said, some come easy, but some of them, it's like you're just sitting there trying to figure out what am I going to do? Where am I going with this? And somehow it seemed to work out. But, there are times when that fear comes in. It's like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to just write that first note on the page, but it always seems to happen somehow.
In the moments of writer's block or not yet knowing where you want to go with something, in the gaming world, are there some pressures from above to really, hey, like, we have a deadline here. Like, if it's not coming out, you better make it come out somehow. Otherwise, we're not gonna have music to this project.
I've been really lucky in the companies that I've worked for, working for Valve, working for Cyan, even back in the very beginning, working for Broderbund. It's been pretty autonomous for the most part. With Valve, I mean, it's sort of a flat organization. You don't have a manager telling you what to do every day and giving you a punch list, that type of thing. You're responsible for being able to create and keep up with everybody on your own. I mean, and if you don't, then you don't last. So in also in the in at least in my world, and this isn't true for everybody because contractors it's a different story. I mean, a lot of times contractors are brought in on the very end, especially on the audio and music side of things. They're brought in at the end of the project to say, okay, now we've got 2 months. You need to come up with a score and finish it off. And music sometimes is, or generally is, one of the last things in the process that's being done because you're kind of you're kind of creating to what's there. The edits are done, the scenes are cut, everything is done, and now you write the music to it. That's not necessarily the best approach, but that's generally how it's done. I've been lucky again with Valve, for example. With Dota, I've been on Dota for 13 or 14 years. It's been a progression over time. Of course, there has been times when it's like, okay, we've got a trailer that's coming out. We need to get this done in a month or whatever it might be. And there's definitely deadlines involved. But for the most part, you kind of parallel the work that's being done on the game, the development that's being done. If you can kind of parallel that, it works out a lot better, and you're not feeling this massive crunch at the end. You're kind of throwing ideas back and forth, and there was a game that I did with Valve not too long ago with Artifact where I think I was on it for about a year, maybe not quite a year, and would put music in, as it goes, and have some feedback or whatever. But for the most part, it was spread out about over a period of time, so it wasn't all just stuck to me at the end.
That's fascinating. I've never worked at a game company. I've never made music for games. Could you walk us through the process of kind of how it all works? I mean, you said that for some of the projects you do composition, some of them you do sound design. What happens internally within sort of the realm of audio to make these works complete?
So it's different with every game because the way music works in every game is different. I mean, the dynamics of the music is different. Sometimes it's more reactive, sometimes it's not as reactive. It can be ambient loops, or it can be music that changes on a dime based on what's going on in the game, and you have to be able to compose and react to that. I'll kind of focus on Dota when you ask about what gets done, because I've been on that game the longest. Again, for I think it's been, I want to say 15 years, probably, or so. So when it started out, it was just kind of looking at the concepts and seeing what was available to me as far as story tools, that type of thing. And what attracted me to Dota was it was such a wide variety of characters as far as the heroes go and so forth, that there wasn't like one style that it just had to be. So I had a wide variety of styles that I could pick from. Also started in the very beginning helping out with the sound design, creating a little bit for the different heroes and their the sound design. Maybe, I don't know, maybe did 8 or 9 heroes at the very beginning, but then kind of focused more on music. And the music sort of in Dota, the way it works is it's kind of a layered music system, where as the intensity of the game ramps up, so does the music. So we start adding layers on it, as opposed, it's kind of like a vertical sort of system, as opposed to something that's more horizontal, where it makes the switches to a whole different piece of music as something else happens. So we kind of layered it. So the music gets divided up as maybe the first layer is just more of a pad oriented with orchestra with maybe some strings and whatever, and then we maybe add vocals and add more percussion, add a brighter brass or whatever it may be, and that gives it the intensity levels that we want as the intensity level increases for the game. So the nice thing about Dota, or interesting thing about Dota, is it's not just a game; it's an esport. And we also did a documentary on it, and there's comics on it, and so it's got all these different facets to the game that you can kind of get involved in. So we did a documentary called Free to Play, which was based on the first international that we did, and followed some of the players that were involved in it. So it was a feature length documentary. So got to do sound and mix that. There's trailers that come out for the game on a regular basis, that for new heroes or new gameplay updates. So I get to score the trailers and do the sound design for the trailers as well. Then there's music that happens in game that a new gameplay update that requires some sort of music that I'll create for that. So there's a lot of, it's kind of cool because it's not just, you don't get tired of just doing one thing in one style all the time. And the characters again are so different. Where we started out, the style is kind of epic gothic kind of feel with a big orchestra and big choir and all that. And then there was a few heroes that came out where there was one where I did a bluegrass tune for the heroes reveal, which was it was totally fun because you're taking a U-turn on what you usually do. So the variety is keeps me really interested in the game, and really lucky to be able to do that because not all games are available with that wide of concept that you can do that with.
How much do you work with the game designers and like programmers during the process of making the music and the sound? Is that are they separate or do you actually work together?
Again, it varies on the game. There's been times when I was working on with Cyan or whatever, where it was a little more some of the integration. It was a different type of integration that it is now. When I was working on Portal, for example, I mean, you're kind of when I was working on doing like all the ambience for Portal Two, you're responsible for doing the implementation yourself. Same with Left for Dead, that kind of stuff. So once I was familiar with all the scripting and how to get it in, then you're kind of on your own. I mean, if there's different tools that you need or different ways you want to implement something, then you kind of end up interfacing with the programmers and saying, hey, I need, I'd like this feature, I'd like to be able to do this, and go back and forth with the programmers then. The designers, you do interface with a bit depending on, I remember early on in Left for Dead and stuff, talking to different designers about how a certain a level was going to work and what we could do to make the sound more integrated into the game and make it make more sense for the user. So there was a lot of things that happened like that. So yeah, it really varies. Every situation. I mean, one thing that keeps it interesting as far as writing for games is it is always a different situation. So it keeps you on your toes.
Speaking of different situations, your track gallery theme for Uru
Hmm.
won a Gang Award and was later used in Spielberg's Munich. How did it feel knowing that Spielberg himself was listening to your music, connected
Yeah.
with it so much to green light it for his movie?
Well, it was in the trailer for his movie to be clear, but I can only tell you the story that I heard, and I don't I don't know what's true, but I mean what you said kind of covers it. It was a thrill to know that he had been listening to the music and got connected to it, and from what I heard, again, I never spoke with Spielberg, but he had. I don't know if he played the game or somehow was exposed to the piece, but just fell in love with the piece. And this is what I'm told, and just wanted it to play in the trailer.
Is there a different type of gratification seeing and hearing your music on a trailer for a major motion picture versus hearing and seeing your music when a game that you worked on is launched?
Well, you can't. You're not in the room with the player for the most part. So what you depend on to kind of get your feedback is what you see online. You get community response when you're playing a game, and that's great. If you're in a theater or something and you see something of yours and you get immediate response from the audience, it's much different. I think the most gratification that I'll get is doing these orchestra concerts where we're playing in an arena with 30,000 people in Shanghai, and you go to a certain piece of music and they start cheering because they know it. They know all the music, they know it note for note, and to hear them respond to that in the moment is incredibly gratifying. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's a rush, and hearing them respond as you play it, as you're conducting the orchestra, is a lot of fun. And I think that's the most visceral feedback that you're going to get. I mean, games are great too because in a way, I mean, people live with your music for tens or hundreds of hours, right? It's not a matter of listening to it on the radio and listening to, the attention span now on is 6 seconds, right? On TikTok or something like that. So it's like, and they flip through it and they slide to the next one. Whereas playing a game, they get to actually immerse themselves in your music, and you get a lot of feedback from people that actually get to hear it and experience it and feel it how it's meant to be felt. So that's also a good feeling when you get that type of feedback.
So good. So, Tim, if we could we transition to talking about this exciting new album that you have in the works?
Sure.
You have a new jazz album coming out very soon. Can you tell us a little bit more about the project?
Sure. something that I had an album out years ago with. I was signed with Rhino Records, Warner Brothers, and put out sort of a jazz fusion type album, and had a really bad experience with the record company, as
Oh,
most people I know have. And so, and again, that career sort of got sidelined as the composing and arranging stuff took over, and the video game industry. So, I mean, I still played and I still did occasional gigs, but like I said, there's not a lot of opportunity for that around here. But I was inspired by a Michael Cimbello tune, "Maniac." I don't know if you remember that tune from Flashdance. And
was it the one that goes, "She's a maniac, maniac"? Okay,
well,
that's the one.
he redid that song. He rearranged it and did it with an orchestra and did it in a sort of a jazz vein. And it's like the way he reharmonized it and remade it is like it was just inspiring. It was one of the best remakes, and he did it himself. It's not someone else that came and redid it. It was Michael Cimbello that did it, and it was so inspiring. I said, "Man, I got to do something like this." So about that was about 2 or 3 years ago. So I kind of started playing around with it, and in my spare time, just and picking tunes that I thought would lend themselves well to be instrumental tunes. And some of the best tunes, in my opinion, from the pop eras were like the 70s and 80s. I mean, they were just the production and the writing and the iconic melodies and that type of things from groups like, like Chicago, like Earth, Wind and Fire, like David Foster, Chaka Khan, Jimmy Webb, all these people that wrote some great tunes in that era. And they're kind of standards, right? In a certain way, it's like listening to "Fly Me to the Moon" from Frank Sinatra in the 50s and 60s. That type of stuff. Those tunes are still played today. There's a lot of pop music today that probably will disappear and won't be as iconic 10, 20 years from now. So I decided to look into those tunes and redo them as instrumentals. And some of them add orchestration, or actually all of them add orchestration to, and redo them as instrumentals as a trumpet instrumental. So that's started working on it about 2 years ago, and then it's just sort of picked up steam in the last 6 months or so with adding different friends and people that I've played with over the years that have become interested in it as well. And so now it's coming to a head, and in the stage of doing the final mixes for it, and should be released sometime around the end of May, I'm hoping. At this
Wow. Earlier you talked about getting the licenses for the songs. Is that a pretty difficult process?
I'm not sure. I'm still
No.
working on it, but I don't think it is. I think, I mean, there's so many cover tunes out there, right? It can't be impossible. So I have someone else that's actually working on that, and I think it's a process you just submit and go through, and it's kind of automatic. But
Mhm.
I don't know for sure yet.
You had mentioned playing around with the tunes. Are they somewhat jazz interpolations of the tunes?
Just yeah, definitely to a certain degree. I mean, they have some of them have solo sections on them, where you're improvising solos over them, and then some of them are more orchestral in arrangements where it's just trumpet and orchestra. I did an arrangement on "Pure Imagination," the tune from Willy Wonka or whatever, and that's mainly just strings and a small quartet. And then some of them I did through the fire that Chaka Khan and David Foster did, and that's strings and a big band. So it kind of runs the gamut. It goes from one end to the other. But yeah,
Mm,
it's definitely in the jazz vein for the most part.
that's really cool. I mean, you mentioned Shaka Khan and Through the Fire. I think
Yeah.
because of the hip hop interpolation released by Kanye West, a lot of younger people can connect to that in sort of like the hip hop realm. But then if that particular audience was to hear this rendition of it, I think they could connect to it in a whole new way. And I think that's what's pretty amazing about music from a lot of these earlier eras that get reintroduced in later decades, and then they can just keep kind of coming out in different ways that where different audiences can connect to them over and over again.
Yeah, that's what makes a standard, right? And actually, the name of the album is called "Setting Standards" because these are tunes that are iconic, and
Mm,
they through the 70s and 80s they had melodies and production that you remember. You remember it forever. It's not something that just. I mean, there's so many songs that I listen to that are, and I don't mean to, be sounding like, get off my lawn type of thing, but like there's so many songs that you hear them once or twice and you just can't remember them. There's not a melody that sticks in your mind, or a orchestration or something. I mean, there are some good ones, but they're few and far between. But what was happening in the 70s and 80s and earlier, was people were working together on the music. I mean, they were in the studio doing this stuff. They were collaborating in ways that doesn't happen as much anymore because everybody's more reliant on the technology to do it as opposed to the actual artistry. And I mean, that's an ongoing discussion that we could have a whole nother conversation about. But I think that's one of the major reasons that these tunes stick around, and they can be used in so many different ways. Like you said, whether it's hip hop or whether it's jazz or whether, I mean, I've heard some of them covered in show tunes or in a rock setting or whatever. I mean, they're just great tunes with great changes and great melodies, and there's so much you can do with that.
What's your approach to writing a memorable melody? Because yeah, I feel like that is one of the things that is kind of mysterious to me, like how one melody can be remembered so well and another just kind of goes in and out the ear.
Yeah.
Even if it's a nice, some pop tunes have really good hooks, but just for some reason they don't stick.
It's a good question and it's tough to answer, but I mean, one of the things that I've always been really adamant about is having a melody that makes sense and says something. You know, it's tough I think it's easier actually, maybe when you're doing something, at least for me, because I don't write lyrics, but when you're doing something instrumentally, it's easier to pick that melody out and sort of make it where it's like it has to work because it's an instrument. With lyrics, sometimes you can get away with something that's not as melodic because you're focusing on the lyric. It's like with rap music is not melodic, but the lyric grabs your attention. So I mean, somewhere not in between, but on the other opposite end of the spectrum is the melody that's instrumental. So when I'm working on something, I mean, I take a lot of time working on the melodies and then orchestrating sometimes around that. And the melodies often I often start with the melody and then orchestrate around it instead of starting with a groove or something like that and then trying to write a melody over it. And I think if you come up with a good melody, it's much easier to orchestrate and reharmonize it in ways that make it make sense and make it lasting. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Hmm.
And sometimes you hit and sometimes you miss, you know.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. What are you doing to these standards that is different and people can look forward to in terms of like these arrangements?
Mainly it's about reharmonizing stuff. It's like I also did a version of Heart of Mine from that Bobby Caldwell wrote and was recorded by Boz Scaggs and Bobby Caldwell. And the intro, for example, is extremely simple. And if you listen to it on either one of the original recordings, I think it goes from the one chord to the five chord or something. I don't even remember what the original does, but I took every note in the intro and reharmonized it and put a structure underneath it that moved along with it. So stuff like that to me is what's interesting, causing a little bit more tension and release. I mean, jazz is all about tension, or even music in general. To me, is interesting when there's tension and release. If it just goes, a flat 1-4-5 chord or whatever, and just plays everything over the top of it, that kind of gets old pretty quick to me. So using a lot of upper structures and chords and alterations of the chords gives it that tension and richness that may not be in the original. So I've tried to add that and make it a little more lush or a little bit more, just a little more depth to some of them. And not that they don't have that to begin with, because they're all great tunes. And I'm just trying to put my spin on it. That's all. And
Mm.
that's what I like to do, is reharmonize that stuff. So I've done that to a certain degree, but not to where it's not recognizable. I want to make sure that it's accessible to everyone.
Were there any songs on the track listing that you chose because they were not only great tunes, but very personal to you at some point in your life where you were just like, this song is actually a soundtrack to a moment in my life, and I can't not put it on this album.
You know, yes and no. Yes, because some of that's an afterthought. You know, after you do it, it's like, okay, that makes total sense. There are some tunes that I just really connected with. And I remember I was coming back from a camping trip and I heard Smile Again by Manhattan Transfer. And I hadn't listened to that or heard that tune in 20 years. And it was really, I don't know how popular it was when it came out, but I heard it and it just brought me back. And it was like such a beautiful tune and so well written. And it's actually one of the tunes that probably is so iconic that it was very difficult not to do it very close to the original because the chord changes and the melody are so iconic that it's hard to vary from that without making it sound just not sound right. So, but that tune just struck a chord. And I remember when I heard it driving home, it almost brought tears to my eyes. It's like, I've got to do this tune. It's just such a great tune. The other ones, again, there are. I won't go into which ones were soundtrack to my life, but there's definitely some that hit home for sure. Absolutely.
You had also mentioned that collaborated with some of the members of Earth, Wind, and Fire on this record.
Yeah.
How did you get them involved, and how was it like collaborating with them?
So John Paris is the drummer for Earth, Wind, and Fire, and he and I go back 40 years. We played in a band together as in our 20s, and several bands. Actually, we played with Sheila E. together a long time ago for a short time. We played in a band called All Is One, and several other instances. And we kind of kept after that, early 20s. We kind of both went our separate ways, and I think he moved down to LA at that time, and I was still in the Bay Area doing my thing, and we kept in touch roughly over the past 40 years. um, but and when Earth, Wind, and Fire would come into town or whatever, come close, he'd get me tickets, and I'd go see him, and we'd hang out a little bit. But about a year ago, a little over a year ago, they had a reunion for the All Is One band, which played again 40 years ago. We were all together. I think it was like 8, 9 people in the band, and I couldn't make the date. I was somewhere else, so I couldn't do it. But he asked me, and they did a reunion again this last November, and so it got us reconnected, and we started talking again, I meant, and he said, yeah, we just talked about what each other was doing outside of Earth, Wind, and Fire, outside of Valve or whatever it may be. And I mentioned this project to him. And he said, man, I would love to play on it. I'd just love to play on it. So I sent him some of the tunes, and he goes, you know what? He goes, I can sing on it too. And so his vocal touches are amazing on it. And his vocal stylings just added so much. And and I gave him. He ended up playing on 5 tracks, playing drums on 5 tracks of them, and singing on 2. And it was one of those things that, like with him, it was like a mind melt. I mean, the stuff that he did and that I gave him or that he gave me was just, there was no changes. It was like, that's perfect. So we were on the same wavelength as far as how we thought. And he's such an incredible individual too. He's just so generous of his time and his energy. And I'm so happy to have reconnected and worked with him again after all these years. So anyway, we did this All Is One reunion, and I ended up going and playing trumpet with them last November in the Bay Area, and going back with all the guys that were in the band 40 years ago. And the guitar player Serge sat in with us at that gig, and he played with the band as well. And I want to say his last name. It's Dimitrijevic, and if I mispronounce it, I apologize right now to Serge. But so he another great guy, and I started talking to him about it. He goes, yeah, I'd love to play on it. So he played on 2 cuts as well. And again, another great guy, fun to work with, and extremely talented player. Both of them. I mean, John did a great job on the drum stuff, great job on the vocals, and Serge did a wonderful job on the guitar stuff too. So it was a blast working with them. I mean, they're just great musicians, and they've played with a lot of the best people in the industry. There's nothing I can complain about. It was a great experience, and they made it so much easier for me to do. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the story of my connection with those guys.
What do you hope the ripple effects will be after the release of the album?
Well, I mean, I did this because I wanted to do it and I enjoyed doing it. And I don't expect this to be number one on the charts or anything like that. I just want to put it out there and hopefully people listen to it and enjoy it. I mean, I don't know what the ripple effect is going to be, and I'm not totally concerned about that. My main concern was getting it done and having it out there and having something that I felt good about that was my own. I mean, for the last 30 years or whatever in the video game industry, I've been writing my own music, but it's always for someone else in a sense. It's for a certain project or a certain idea or a whatever it may be, and it's been extremely satisfying. Don't get me wrong, but this is something that's just I wanted to do, and so that's why I'm putting it out there. And we'll see. I mean, ripple effect would be great if it gets some traction and gets some airplay. That's great. If it doesn't, so be it. It's just I'm happy to have it out there.
We're totally rooting for you for the release of the album.
Thanks.
And we just are very excited that as a music creator, you can do things for projects that are for others. And, you can take a couple of steps in the other direction and do stuff for yourself that is completely in a different world, but at the same time, it's still a part of you. It's still a part of your journey. And as you know, we are a platform with a mandate to educate the next generation of music creators. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who look at you now and think, man, how do I do what Tim Larkin has done? Um, for those aspiring composers, songwriters, artists, players who look up to you, what advice would you give them?
No, that's another question that I get asked a lot, and it's also it's turned into an interesting question because of the fact that it's such a dynamic industry. It's changed so much. How I got into the game industry is probably not how anybody would get into it today. I mean, we literally, a friend of mine and I looked up. We were starting a music jingle company or whatever, and we looked in the phone book, which nobody looks in the phone book anymore, and we found Broderbund software under B because we were thinking CD-ROMs need music. Let's do that. And we called them up and talked to somebody on the phone, and ended up getting an interview and getting hired there. Both of us did. And that's what started our career. It was really kind of a fluke. And so that type of personal connection, I mean, or just doesn't happen that much anymore. I mean, the way and it's a flooded industry now where it wasn't when I started. I mean, when I started, it was just opening up, and it was much easier for me. I mean, we were very lucky to get the position we did at the time that we did. However, that being said, I still get resumes all the time through Valve, and then I also used to get them when I was working at Cyan or whatever. I get resumes and CDs and whatever, and people saying, "Yeah, I want to." When I was working on the Myst series of games at Cyan, I would get CDs from people, and their music was Myst type music, and they'd say, "Hey, I want to write. Can you give me a job writing Myst music?" It's like, well, that's what I'm doing. That's my job. And it's like they want to take your job. That's not the best way to approach someone. So I know a lot of composers and will approach other composers and say, I'd like to write for you or with you or whatever. And that's great, but it's not the best way to approach. And as you know, one thing that is timeless or whatever is making those personal connections. I mean, it's how you get it. I mean, for kids that are in school right now, if you're studying composing or whatever it might be, there's also going to be people studying video game programming or whatever, or an artist or a producer or a director. And those are the people you want to know. And those are the people that you're going to grow through the industry with. You look at, all the early film producers like Spielberg or whatever, and Lucas, they knew each other, right? And they knew people that did sound or that did music or whatever. And they kind of brought them in and involved them. And they became, the icons of that era of filmmaking. Well, it's the same with video games. I mean, I brought people into the industry early on that I knew, and I was lucky enough to have had people that recognized me or knew me and brought me along. So it happens through personal connections. I mean, it's you can be the greatest composer in the world or sound designer, and if you don't have that personal connection, if you don't have the personality and that type of thing, if you're just trying to show off your sizzle reel, well, there's 10,000 other people out there that have that exact same quality and exact same skill. So you've got to standing out is it's hard to everybody says, well, you have to somehow stand out. Well, that's true, but standing out in a personal way, I think, is way more important. And I mean, some of the guys that I started working for early on, even in the jingle industry, became good friends. I mean, whether or not I was working for them or not, I'm still their friends, and we still talk, and we're still connected. And I think that's really the secret to making it in any industry. I think it's kind of a common thread. I don't think we're that much different because it's video games or because it's music. I mean, that just is a skill and something that you have to do and have to have.
Of all those resumes and CDs that you got, what was something that somebody did that made you select them?
Oh man, I can tell you a dozen things that made me not select them. I mean, occasionally you come across something that's like, it's not about it's not about what they did. It's not about how good their music is or how good their sound design is, but it's how they did it. They'll come across with their thought process, and that's what's important. It's like, well, how did you come to that conclusion, or why did you do this? In video games, it's important as a sound designer, especially, to be able to communicate to the audience, to the user. Um, Sound gives clues. It gives you, it communicates all kinds of different things if it's done right. It's not a matter of just putting a sound to something that happens. I mean, in some cases it is, but in many cases it's also communicating what's happening somewhere else, or what's happening to you, or what level you are in the game, or what you need to do, or where you need to go. So it's more about the thought process, and that the people can explain that behind their work and say, this is why I did it. That's what's interesting. So, yeah, I would say it's not just about showing off I made this really cool sound, or I have this piece of music that's just awesome. And that's great. And that's a good start. But tell me why.
Mm.
A lot of people can't do that. I mean, we've had interviews where it's very common for sound people and music people to say, well, I want to tell a story. And so it's like, okay, well, tell me how you're going to tell that story, and how you're going to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think that'll go a long way for a lot of people.
I hope so. Yeah.
Uh, Absolutely. Well, Tim, that was the last question in the main part of the interview. What's next for Tim Larkin? Anything you want to promote to the Sonically community?
Yeah. I mean, next is obviously focusing on getting the album out. And I mean, other than stuff that I'm doing at work, I mean, I'm still employed at Valve, and I still have a constant stream of things to do there. And I think next at Valve, I'm preparing for a concert that I'm going to be doing in Hamburg, Germany in September. So getting the orchestra parts ready for that, and then getting the album out and seeing what happens. I mean, that's kind of a spare time thing, but it still consumes your mind a bit. So we'll see how it goes, and hoping for the best.
Awesome. Well, once again, Tim, we're rooting for you. We wish you the best of success with the new album. We wish you more success with all you do in the gaming industry, with however far you take Dota, and if there's anything that we can do in the future to support you, we would love to do so. So
I appreciate that.